I agree, not only in politics, but also in film. I think that the Canadian film industry has had
Still
a
got it.
dynamic, right? Did you see that coming? I think the Canadian film industry for many, many years has had a power dynamic where there's just been a certain number of dudes in power who get all the money, and it's really hard to break in. And Bobby, you put up a very interesting post about the turmoil that's happening in telefilm. Can you give us a little bit more information about it?
Sure. I mean, like, it's funny because I, can be a professional asshole, as we all know, which I love. I love it. And yet when it comes to telefilm, I'm such a centrist because I see both sides.
He's a centrist.
Now when it's politically convenient. No, but I really do see both sides, right? Because it's such a Byzantine complex problem. Like, basically, they need more diversity for people of color and women and LGBTQ communities to have more representation, and it's public money. So yes, but at the same time, the system has existed for so long, where the same kinds of people have been getting the money, and yet some of these people are incredibly successful. They're winning awards internationally. They're working with celebrities. They've done this for 20, 30 years, so they've really figured things out at a high level. And so now it's like, okay, let's take money away from people who are succeeding and give it to people who are a risk. But at the same time, if you avoid the risk, well, now people who look like us, quite frankly, aren't going to get an opportunity to get their stuff made. And then you have the second problem, which I actually think is a greater problem, where the whole system's producer driven. So it doesn't even matter how talented the creative is, right? Or how accomplished the artist is. Ultimately, you're funneled through the business end of art anyway. And I actually think that's the reason why Canadian films and television series don't really have an audience, is because they're these sort of like failed corporations that aren't accountable to the audience.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, and I think demographically, I was just watching an interview with Tina Fey with David Letterman, where she was talking about, until she was the head writer for SNL, that of course everything skewed masculinely, and so there might be a skit that would be brought up, and then not because the dudes were just generally being assholes, but because they literally didn't understand the concept of, Kotek's classic. Like, they didn't understand why that would be funny to half of the audience who would be watching it. And when you don't have those voices in the room at a production level or, directorial level, all of those things, when you don't have those voices there, you're not going to know what you don't know until there's that person in the room to basically say, excuse me, I just feel as somebody with breasts that we would be better served in. Just like, no, dude, this is funny. It's funny to women, and you have to trust me on this because I've got a uterus.
Yeah. Jim Belushi was famous for being very misogynist and being very, very hurtful towards his female actors on SNL, and doing everything he could to undermine them because he didn't believe women were funny. And it's just like, dude, come on. Like,
wow. At the same time,
I love hearing that Jim Belushi didn't think women were funny, because for me, that's very much pot one, kettle nil.
Yay! No, somebody else.
Here's the complexity of the debate, right? Is that I think it's easy if if it's like racist, sexist white man versus victim minority, okay? But I don't believe that all straight white men with big resumes are sexist, racist pieces of shit, right? And this is the problem. Some of them are, but some minorities are pieces of shit too, right?
What?
Right? So for me, if it's like the person, like the Harvey Weinstein needs to go so that the enterprising young Black entrepreneur can succeed, like, I'm all about it. But I think, for example, for me as a writer, I've done some things, but if you're going to compare me to Aaron Sorkin, right? Like even me, I'm like, don't pick me, like pick Aaron Sorkin. And I think this is really what the debate is, because you have some people in Canada who have accomplished great things, and there's no evidence to suggest that they're actually racist or sexist. But the truth is that people of color and women and the LGBTQ plus community cannot benefit in a way unless opportunities are sort of taken away from the more established community, which is
I
mostly
think there's
straight
room
white
enough
men.
for everyone.
There's not, because there's not
Definitely
enough money. You can't give
Well, but in
equal
terms
money
of,
to
I think that you can have, I think that particularly in Canada, because we're so nice as Canadians, and we believe that I really do believe that you have these people who are in positions of power. And I think it really does, and I'm going to use this word, behooves them to support up and coming artists, and not just like, and not to the exclusion of your WASPy, BFA graduate from University of Ottawa or Sheridan or wherever, right? But I do feel like you have to have these people who, and I know half the people down in the States are doing masterclass to make extra money and, to share their knowledge, but there are also artists who are choosing to mentor people coming up through the ranks. And I think that as we, we're just learning. It's like my daughter who's 20 is in a world where she has expectations of how that world should be. They don't match the expectations that her grandparents have, right? They don't match, I don't have the same conversations with my daughter that I have with my mom when she says, well, what do you think about all these statues being torn down? It's like, because my daughter's like, yeah, duh. That's her real reality, right? Like that is the world she's growing up in. And so that is changing how the arts are being viewed, because we're looking at it now through a younger lens, younger than our lens. So
I don't think we are looking at it through that lens. I think we're looking at it through an older lens and a younger lens, right? So I thought about Todd actually the other day while I was touching myself. And I think that this analogy really highlights the complexity of this debate, right? So Kenny Robinson, who's a friend of mine, who I'm sure is a friend of most of us, who's, this sort of brilliant Black pioneer comedian and has helped so many.
There's no one better than Kenny Robinson in terms of performance.
He's helped so many people of color, and he's so funny, and he and a really kind man, which is funny because he has such a sort of like character as a comedian. He's really like a really soft heart kind of person, right? So there's this big article about him, which is well deserved. And it made me think about comedy and the idea of how many people he's helped. And then I thought, okay, so this is the metaphor, right? So let's say we take Todd Van Allen, who, I think is maybe a little too left, but there's no evidence to suggest that he's racist, sexist, or a piece of shit, okay?
Hang on. There's more show to come.
Yeah, wait for it.
But I think of it, and this is how I think about telefilm. I think of it like Todd's always talking about comedy, which is interesting to me. And it's like this sign-up sheet. And it's like, okay, and I think of it like in Canada, there's like one more spot left for a comedian to perform, and it's between Todd Van Allen and a completely unknown, I don't know, let's say woman of color, right? Who should that final slot be given to? And I think this is where we're at. It's a debate.
I disagree. I don't think it's that binary.
Can I tell you who that spot goes to if I just look at my career for a bit? It goes to her.
No, but okay, so that's interesting. But why do you say that? Why do you say that?
First of all, I say that facetiously and comedically. One of the reasons that she gets the spot is that on my show, I make sure that she has a spot to get a spot. Whenever I'm curating Write 'em Up, I make sure I have a wide broad band of color, sexuality, and gender as represented as best as I can. And I think those are the things that should be doing. It's like, are there going to be spots for middle-aged white men? Sure. But do they have the talent to back it up? Right. I think, if you want to book me on your show, by all means do. But don't do it out of a sense in the same way that you would give it to a person of color to be representative. I do not want to be representative like, oh, we have this entirely diverse show, we better get a middle-aged white guy on there. I find that equally as condescending. If I have jokes that you enjoy, by all means book me. The talent is going to rise to the top, whether in however it goes. I've seen it with my career, I've seen it with the career of others, is that the escalation of virtue, it can only take you so far. And then you have to start paying for the checks that you just wrote. And so I think in order to get more stage, like I have a lot of stage time experience, I would not mind deferring it to others. That said, I also enjoy doing my own work. So I agree with you, Bobby. There is a balancing act, and that is a discussion to have. But if you want to book me on your show, book me on your show.